Welcome to another episode of It's a God Thing. We are so excited at It's a God Thing, new platform, new episodes, and just starting this new platform with this episode with none other than Giselle. Giselle's family, pretty much. And Giselle has an amazing, amazing testimony. And you know that here at It's a God Thing, we love to show people uh, transform lives have been touched by Jesus Christ. And we're not arguing about religion, we're not arguing about different theologies, we're not, none of that. I am just bringing you stories and that you can decide for yourself. But Giselle, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you are here.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and you and I have kind of like been talking actually all day, preparing for this episode, and there's so much to your story. That's a lot. So we're probably going to have to do like a second episode, part two, at one point. But there were so many nuggets as you're walking with the Lord now that you can kind of go and kind of like pinpoint, yeah, oh, this was that. And we were talking about there were so many. So let's do this. Let's take it from as a child. Let's start as a child. You grew up in a Christian home, right? You're saying we went to church every Sunday.
Yes, we
Let's
did.
talk about that a little
Yes,
bit.
we did, right? So not only do we go to church every Sunday, but even my babysitter was a Christian woman. And I would, if I didn't go with mom, I went with her for many, many years, every Sunday. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then something happened along the way. You had a lot of questions as a child.
I did. I did. I'm very inquisitive. I would say I was about 12 when I kind of gathered a whole set of questions and was told that we have faith. We don't ask questions. And so that's when I started searching for the answers.
And now these questions, you were asking these questions to your mom, your church pastors.
So my Sunday school teacher, to the pastor, to the pastor's daughter, whoever would give me answers.
Right.
My mother image, I should say, mirrored that we would just have faith,
right?
Faith, and it just didn't satisfy my itch.
Because like when we were talking, that's one of the things that like I noticed as Giselle, even from your very young age, it was like the Holy Spirit was already like calling you, like you wanted to know more. You knew deep inside that there was something more, something deeper, right? And so you were saying how no one had answers for you. The people that you trusted, the people that you felt like you could go to, didn't have the answers. So what did you do?
I went searching. I went searching for the answers. I mean, I literally went to museums asking them for the oldest Bibles. I really went searching on my own. I ended up in the occult section of the library as a child. I didn't even know that that's what it was, but searching.
And you said you started looking and you ran into what?
So many things. So at that age, at around 12 years old, I was already looking at things that were ancient, Egyptian, Kabbalah. It wasn't named Kabbalah; it was called Jewish Mysticism. The book. Later on, that's when I realized what it was. Things about ancestors, things that I thought were the answers that I wasn't getting at church.
Now, let me take you back a little bit because I wonder, why do you feel like at such a young age, because even younger, I know you were telling me even younger, you always felt like a spiritual connection. You want to talk about your spiritual experiences when you were a child?
I just had a deep knowing. I'm the kid who could tell mom who's on the phone before she picks up the phone. And back then there wasn't cell phones. Right. I was the child who could get a sense of, I bet the teacher's not going to be here today. And then the teacher was out. I was that kid. Although I didn't think it was unusual. I also could pick up on uncomfortable energies, let's say at home or something like that. That I was that person, and I still am that person.
Right. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. So in your search for spirituality, Do you feel like you were searching for God?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is important, and this is actually what I want to talk about, because you were in search of God. You wanted to know who God was. There's this powerful being out there somewhere, and I want to get to know him. And then those around you and couldn't lead you to him. So unfortunately, when someone's seeking, uh, the enemy had a huge part to play in that,
Yeah.
because he said, "Oh, I have the answers for you, Giselle." Right? And so let's talk about your experience in the occult and how you started growing in that.
So it started from an early age, just from everything I was reading. And so I would say by the age of 16, I was already deep into reincarnation,
Mm-hmm.
and and even touching a little bit on astral projection
Mm-hmm.
at that young age.
You were learning about it, or you were actually performing these things?
So I wouldn't say that I was performing it. I would say I was having these experiences that
Mm-hmm.
I would know, oh, I wasn't just asleep. I was literally just floating around in my own hallway and
Mm-hmm.
came back into my body.
Mm-hmm.
And who can I tell that to? No one.
Right.
No one.
Right. Because they didn't have the simple answers of God.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Right.
I mean, later in life, I did explore those topics a little deeper, but everything.
Mm-hmm.
I looked into uh, Islam. I looked into, as I mentioned, Judaism. I looked into Hinduism, Buddhism, many different types of faiths, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to find the answer. I mean, ultimately, I get the answer that everyone wrongly thinks today, which is there's many paths to the
Right.
one. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm still trying to reach the one. So it doesn't matter what path I take, because I'm looking for God and God is
Right.
seeking me, and I'll get there. I think I even mentioned that way back when I was dating an atheist who was like, oh, I'm atheist, but you're really spiritual. I'm like, that's okay. If you hang around me long enough, you're going to believe in God. It's all right.
Right.
Stuff around me happens. So you're going to believe there's something going on.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, as you started getting more into the occult and stuff, because I know you did tell me that you studied a lot of religions, and one of the things that I did like about you was that you really would go deep. And so there's a lot that you know, that even most people won't know, because
Mm-hmm.
they don't take the time to research. But you have been on the search. You got really into the new age, like really
Yes.
deep into the new age.
Yes.
Let's fast forward all of that, and then
Yes.
this became your life and your focus.
Yes. So my life, my focus, let's see, by the end of my 20s, I took on a full career as a yoga instructor, which
Mm-hmm.
involved all types of Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
I was a certified Ayurvedic practitioner that studied in India,
Mm-hmm.
had a plethora of clients, including hands on healing clients.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, if I didn't stop that myself, that would still be continuing. I still get calls for hands on healing. It went deeper within the last few years, and I know this has become very popular with shamanism and
Mm-hmm.
ayahuasca. I went to Peru. I went up those ranks really quickly, really quickly. They were like, "Yep, you've got it, kid."
Mm-hmm.
And
Because you had a gift. And we're going to
that's
talk a little bit about
that was.
having a gift. Okay.
I was too humble to go there, but that's what
Right.
the conversations were.
And that's okay. And the reason why I say that, it's because the gifts that we have come from God. And I know that we were talking about, you had seen Michelle Seidler's episode and how much you can relate. And that was one of the things that I learned from her, because same thing, you both have similar stories as to, she knew she would see things when she was younger, she would experience things when she was younger. At one point, they thought she was crazy, but until one woman of God told her, "You're not crazy, you just have a gift from God," and totally kind of diverted her life. But you did have this tremendous gift, and you were being used in that gift. And before we move forward, because I want you to start then talking about your encounter with Jesus and your encounter with the Holy Spirit, um, there might be people watching, um, especially since I'm going to post this on my Facebook. And I have a very variety of friends that are from, they're Hindus, like Muslims, different walks of life, and different spiritual beliefs, let's say that. But when you talk about the Hinduism and all those things and yoga, just really quickly, why was that not something that is good? Can you share some experiences as to you got to the point where I realized this is not okay, like something was not right?
Yeah, I would say that the number one thing is that I knew that I deeply still wasn't happy or satisfied,
Okay.
and that the people I was studying with, although some extremely famous names, well-known authors and presenters internationally, they too
Mm,
were not happy, and there was a slant of almost a type of a darkness
mm-hmm,
around these people. Some experiences that come off the top of my head were things like people looking as if they were tranced out most of the time, not fully grounded.
mm,
A lot of those people that would come to me, I was always like, you need to get on your feet, like you need to get out of your head. What's going on here? And I couldn't quite understand how I could be in that world. Now I know why, and take on all of this
mm-hmm,
stuff and yet still be very grounded, still be very logical, like, what's next? I think it's because I do question and I do stay very logical. One very powerful experience is that I was in ayahuasca experience, one of my very last ones, and I I'm in it with everyone else. Again, I was very high up in the ranks, so by that point I was participating in the music and other things. And at some point, I feel this sensation to stand. So I stand up while everyone can barely stand up. I stand up and I go to the center of the room and I tune in, and it's Jesus.
mm,
And I didn't know what to do except I went down to the floor and laid myself completely head on the floor. And I just laid there experiencing, now that I know it's the Holy Spirit. Unlike everyone else who was really under the influence, I felt like I was completely sober in that moment.
mm-hmm.
And I was definitely that person who could take plenty of this ayahuasca stuff.
Right. Okay. So, can you talk? Because honestly, for people that are not into
Yes,
things and they don't know, they probably have no idea what you're
absolutely.
talking about.
Yes,
And actually, I would say that I was one of them. Like, what are you talking
that's
about? And
good.
then I remember watching someone else's testimony, and it was the same. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like what Giselle just told to me.
Yes.
So it's okay. And
Yeah.
I did ask her, is there something that you don't want to share? She goes, I am an open book to
Yes.
whoever can get help. So let's talk a little bit about that, exactly what type of practice that is, because a lot of people might know the surface of these practices, but the reason why I wanted you to share is because you went and you were high up in those ranks,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a little bit more knowledge and understanding than a lot of people that are just touching the surface. So let's talk about that.
Okay. So I'll say to define ayahuasca, what they call it in layman's terms is a plant medicine. All
Mm-hmm.
types. I mean, cilantro is a plant medicine,
Right.
It's a plant medicine. It's made in a tea form, and it's a hallucinogen.
Mm-hmm.
People take this, and they describe this tea that they drink, that it gives them like 30 years of therapy in one night or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But the truth is that it's a seeking of something outside themselves to
Mm-hmm.
heal some internal pain that they can be looking to God or even a therapist
Right.
to heal. And usually it's not a one-off.
Mm-hmm.
Usually people continue to try to heal this and heal that, and then it does become an idol. It does
Okay.
become.
So when people are under this influence, what are they experiencing?
So, like any psychedelics, so there's psychedelic experiences, hallucinations. They are experiencing a deep sense of a spiritual thing happening to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it is customized. So we used to share at the end so we could hear all the different stories. Lots of physical sensations, lots of purging happens, lots of sweating, some people laughing, some people completely passed out asleep. It is customized to them. And some people would literally say, oh, demons were chasing me all night.
Mm.
And I got to say, I've never had that experience. I've never had the experience of demons were chasing me all night, but that happened more than a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see the horror in them the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me personally, the experience was very enlightening. But it also, as much as it had a high, it had a very strong low.
Mm.
You start to realize, oh, I'm back to the real world, and they're still,
Right.
the roots are still here.
So basically, even though it's supposed to give you this sense of getting to a place spiritually, when you come back, you're in the same boat. Just kind of like any type of influence. We know that when people are under the influence, they're into drugs or anything like that. Most of the time, they're trying to numb something. They're trying to stop the pain or to numb something or not remember or just kind of. So it didn't do that. Now you say you saw Jesus. So when you saw him, did he speak to you?
So for me, a lot of what I experience is energetic sensation. So he spoke to me internally for sure. It wasn't visual, and I didn't have many visuals actually when I was on these plant medicines. There were a few, but not that often. And for me, I knew I wasn't just getting on my knees. My whole body went to the floor. Interesting thing is when I got up off the floor, the shamaness who was holding this ceremony, she looks me right in the eye and she says, the goddess that she worships, that she had her do the same thing and her head was stuck to the floor in the same way. And she said, just like Jesus did to you. Mm. So whatever she was seeing in the spiritual realm, she clearly saw what just happened to me.
That was without you telling her?
I did not tell a soul.
Oh.
I literally just stood up and saw her and then sat right back down. Mm. So she had a sense of what was happening for sure. And I'll be honest with you, the reason I stuck with her for so long is because she would invite Jesus and prayer into these ceremonies. So it was different from being in a secular ceremony, which I've done in the past. But these ceremonies were, they're called Santo Daime, where they take church and they take this psychedelic medicine and they're saying, no, this is a form of God. And we're going to bring these two together. And that brought me a little bit closer to thinking, oh, I'm getting closer to the truth.
Right. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move it forward. When was that time? What happened in your life where you finally encountered the Lord and things just changed and shifted for you?
So there were two times. The first was in 2020. So I'm someone who's always been curious about the truth. So yeah, I'm curious about conspiracy theories. I want the entire truth, and I'm going to make a decision from that point. And I realized in 2020, everybody had a hard year in 2020. I had an amazing year. Things that happened to me were, instead of me being so fixated on possibly getting sick, I was very clear and very confident that I would not get sick. And to this day, I had not had any kind of CV-19 stuff. But also another thing that happened to me is that I started to notice that Christians at that time and churches were really being attacked and bashed, and you couldn't go to church. I didn't get it. I could go to a yoga studio at that time. I could do whatever I want. I could go to ceremonies at that time. So I didn't see Hindus being attacked or Buddhists, right? But I did see what was happening with the Christians. At that time, I was called to Florida to be with my sister, who needed some childcare just so she can go to work. And I thought, great, I'm teaching online, so I'll go do that. And as I was there, and truly isolated, this is when I started to feel as if I wanted some truth in a deeper spiritual way. My sister took me to church. This is the Feminine Christian Center Church. And from the very first day I went there, I was like, wow, there's definitely, the spirit is here. And so I continued there. I remember saying to her that the only two things I want from her is take me to church on Sundays, and I want to go to the beach at least once a week. Let's do this. And so through going to church and also the internal work, because I was still getting up and meditate. I was still doing, I have a very strong meditation to this day, 5 a.m. I'm up. I am meditating now, praying and reading my Bible, that this is the work that started to happen on me. So
Mm-hmm.
through those 4 months, not only did I give my heart and life to Jesus, I got baptized
Mm-hmm.
in the Gulf of Mexico under a sunset. It was just magical. And then I went back to New York, and I would say maybe, I don't know, that I went back in September. By December,
Mm-hmm.
I had that shamanist who I hadn't yet gotten deep with. She was someone who owned a yoga studio in the past I used to work with. She invited me to a ceremony, and I
Mm-hmm.
said, you know what? Yeah. I think I could go. Thinking I'm strong. I've got
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
And I got and it got sucked in, but in a different way. Because again, she had prayer. She acknowledged Jesus.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, great, because he's in my heart. Let's do this. And I would even tell her, oh, he's right here. Jesus is right here. So that's
Mm-hmm.
good that you
Mm-hmm.
recognize him. Um, and so that's when things really took a turn for the next couple of years, because she does not call herself a shamanist, but she does fully acknowledge that she's a witch, and
Mm-hmm.
will say that in front of everyone and anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was not what I would call myself maybe a priestess, an herbalist,
Mm-hmm.
but not a witch, and I never related myself as
Mm-hmm.
that. And so fast forward from there, um, because I got so far, I got to a place where there was a very powerful group of witches who were completely inviting me to be a part of their bigger ceremony that they hold every year all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an orientation, and in that orientation, I'm like, wow, I'm in. I've been practicing, and included my culture of Taino.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is exactly what I've been needing. This is
Mm-hmm.
exactly, I need to get back to my people. And then I went home and did my typical meditations. So one day there I am in front of my altar at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm meditating. And before I would meditate, I would always pray to God. And as I start the meditation, clearly this voice came through that was not like anything I ever heard before. It was definitely Jesus. And he said, don't you want to worship the creator instead of the creation?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And it just hit me really hard. And I said, what do I do? He said, do nothing. And that's really hard for me because I'm works-based. And so for a month, I did nothing. It was no meditation, no prayers, no nothing, no sitting in front of the altar. No,
Mm-hmm.
I would still wake up at 5 a.m. like, what do I do? You said nothing. Okay, I'll do nothing. And so for a month, I just trusted.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is you're doing, okay, do it. But you did speak to me directly, and that was you. Okay. And then from there, the next time I heard, I was like, I want to do something. Like, why don't you tune into RCC?
Mm-hmm.
The people who baptized you are there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did. And from
Wow.
there, it led me to Journey, which led me to my Bible, which led me to, which led me to this interview.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That was the most, and then here you are.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you are understanding now
Absolutely.
of, and I do want to talk a little bit about that, because obviously this is not to bring condemnation, but it's to bring truth and to share light in dark places. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about, that I really want to talk about, it's the lack of knowledge of people. The Bible says that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And so even though you grew up in a Christian home, you knew there was a God, you didn't see the power of God until later when you went to a spirit-filled church and you're like, wow, God is here, like this is it. Um, but you were looking for something and it led you in the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we study the word, we know that there's only one God, one true God. And anything else that we put before him is an idol, and idolizing, of course, goes against God. But I want to talk a little bit about that because when we were talking earlier too, you said, now that I'm learning, because she's still growing, you're still pretty much still very new to the faith, but she found Jesus, she found the truth. She realized that even though in places like that, people are calling to entities and things that are not God. And they're saying it is, but it's not. They say it's Jesus. One of the things about Jesus is that he was very specific and his ways is very narrow. And people don't like to hear that, right? Because we don't like narrowness. We like wide and easy and make us feel good. But he is very narrow when he says he came here to die, and he died on the cross and he shed his blood, and you would understand about the blood, because it means covenant. And that's why no longer people need to do any sacrifices, sacrificing animals. The Jewish used to sacrifice animals. Muslims would do that too, just because to get the forgiveness of God. But Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice, and he came to do that. And he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no one comes to the Father except through me. And I think it's so beautiful that as you were seeking, he could have been like, oh, you're in the wrong place. Like, how many times do I have to try to bring you here? And you were like that little sheep that was led astray because maybe there wasn't enough discipleship. And he met you there in a room full of witches.
Yeah.
I love that, because you won't hear that in most churches, but he met you in a room where they were full of witches and called themselves witches. And he says, why worship anything else when I'm right here? Because he knew that you were always seeking for truth. And so I just love the fact that he showed up. Of course, we also have the word of God. That when you get in the word, you read. That is our instruction for life. That is our instruction how to live our lives. But one of the things that I also wanted to touch on is that I remember you talking about some open doors when you were little that were opened, and no one went meant to open it, but it did. Can you talk about that? Because I think it's really important for parents nowadays raising little ones.
Yes. I would say that, my parents, they really liked horror movies. I wasn't really partial to them because I was very sensitive with energy.
Right.
And it was one particular night that I woke up with searing stomach pains. I don't know what was going on with me, and I had some warm milk made for me, and I cuddled on the couch with my mom, and she got excited. There was some movie coming out. Oh, this is like, it's a really scary movie. Are you sure you're going to be able to watch? Yeah, if I'm with you, yes. Because my parents they were hard workers, so it was hard to get one-on-one time with them. And I was in pain and not feeling well, so comforted on a couch late at night with my mom, fantastic.
Yeah.
While my siblings are asleep. And the movie was The Exorcist.
The Exorcist.
And I watched it. And again, at that age, I don't know if it was 2 a.m, 3. I have no idea what time it was. But I know that it affected me profoundly. I know that when I went into the bedroom to go to sleep, I wasn't alone. I know from that point on, my dreams became something that became, before I had the language of interdimensional, before I had the language of anti-magnetism, I was already experiencing that after that movie. I knew clearly now what was darkness, what was light. As a matter of fact, a couple of days, I don't think I've shared this, a couple of days thereafter, I could feel there was still something kind of lingering in my house. I was a little afraid to go down the hall. We had a very narrow, long hallway. And so I grabbed my little sister, who was still a little baby. She was maybe like 3 years old. And like, if I have her, I'm going to feel a little safer, because as a big sister, I have to protect her. So I grab her, and I just start going down the hallway, and she looks at me, she goes, I'm scared. And so I back up. I'm like, so it's not just me. If the baby's feeling it,
right,
it's not in my head.
Right.
I sit down, don't go down that hallway, and I actually wait for my mother to come out of the bedroom, and I'm like, hey, let's take us down the hallway. But definitely there was something
Right.
there.
Well, and as you know now,
Yeah.
you talked about like going into Journey and stuff, and Journey is a weekend where there's a lot of truth that is being exposed, and it takes you to generational curses, it takes you to roots, it takes you to when you were a child, all of these things, so that you can get healing, like true healing from the Lord. We pray. Sometimes things are cast out of people, and that's a good thing, and then you're like refreshed. So I know that was big for you, but those are gateways.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be careful, parents. The reason why I wanted her to share that as well is like, please be careful what you allow your children to watch. Those are gateways. Anything that comes in the eyes, in the ears, what your kids are listening to are gateways. And then the spiritual world, the enemy wants to come in and wants to um, gear people and take people away from the Lord. And so this is what he does. And now, we're believers, and, he doesn't do anything new, but that is a huge thing, and it can start affecting children. So I wanted you to share that story. And so thank you for sharing that.
For
Anything
sure.
else that you feel like that's important that you wanted to share?
You know, um, when I started teaching yoga 17 years ago, and when I was exploring the New Age many years ago, it wasn't as popular
Mm-hmm.
as it is now. I
Oh,
mean, I went to Five Below the other day looking for some. I think it was like a little headphones, and there are crystals and everything now. I mean,
yes.
it's just in
Yes.
everything now, in every way, and because I went deep, and I understand what kind of doorways that can be held open, and that can be introduced to all types of people. I think it's imperative that everyone be a little more hyper aware of
Yes.
what is being exposed to
Yes.
us.
Absolutely.
Similar to in 2020, how I saw that in truth is truth. So if I'm saying, wait, Christians are being
Mm-hmm.
bashed, I'm also looking at what's the propaganda, what's being popularized,
Right.
and why is that being
Right.
popularized.
Right.
So there's a part of me that's happy to be a rebel, because the
Right.
moment things get popular, that's when I start to back up.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that you said that, because this is why um, believers need to be in the Word and know what the Word, and have discernment. You have to ask for discernment, know what it's got or not. And I watch a lot of people that bring these type of stories to the light. And one of the biggest things is Christians doing yoga,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Hello, like what? Like you guys need to know." And so, anyhow, we just want to bring awareness. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Welcome.
I get really excited to see transform lives. That is my passion, to see when someone just gets transformed by the Lord. And I know that you are a different person. So I'm excited for what the Lord is doing. And she talked about the giftings. If you have a chance, go check out Michelle Seitler's testimony too, from psychic to prophet. She talks a lot about that, and about the giftings that are given to us from the Lord. Um, you know, but sometimes if you don't know God, then you use it for other things and different channels. Let's say it that way. But thank you so much. And guys, there you have it. Another life that has been transformed by the Lord. Have a good one, and I'll see you soon.